Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. My name's Nader. This is going to be a video with some problem sets on how to work through variables as well as primitive data types in JavaScript. If you feel you'd like some extra practice on how these concepts work, feel free to go through some of these questions with me in this video. Okay, to get started, I've created 4 files here together. What I've done in these files, and this will kind of be the trend for all of these kind of problem set videos during the series, is a comment block right here. So this in JavaScript is going to be ignored, but I've put this in here just so that we can stay in the editor together and actually write code and actually see what the kind of problem statement actually is right above. So this is just a warm-up exercise. Hopefully this doesn't take you too long. Just get your hands warmed up. I'll just go through kind of the problem statement and then some of the hints as well, and then we'll actually write the code together after I give you a chance to actually pause the video and try it out yourself. Okay, so this warm-up, we just want to create a few constant variables of the primitive types that I've listed here. So we have a string, number, boolean, null, and undefined. I didn't specify names, so you can name them whatever you like. Most importantly though, there's a console log statement that I'd like you to do for each of these and actually log them out to the console. This means that you're going to have to run the actual program, or this file in this case, using Node.js inside of your terminal. I have a few instructions on how to do that in case you've forgotten or haven't had a chance to watch any of the previous videos on the setup, but just to kind of jog your memory a little bit, you're going to want to make sure that you have your terminal open. In this case, I'm going to open it in Visual Studio Code. You're going to want to type node and then the name of the file. In my case, it's problem set-warmup, but you can create a simpler file name if you like. I encourage you to shorten it just so it's easier to type out. Most importantly though, you're going to want to make sure that the terminal that you're working in is looking at the same folder as where your code is. We've looked at this previously, and I've created a separate video on that, which I can link to if you want kind of a recap on how that works. But this is probably the other thing that trips most people up when they first get started. Okay, so I'll give you a minute to try that out, and then we'll go ahead and code it together. Wonderful. So hopefully you had a chance to pause the video and try that out. Let's code this one together, and then I'll open up the terminal and actually run the program. So we want to create 5 variables here that are constant. So let's start with the first one, which says it should be of type string. You could have named these whatever you liked. In my case, I'm going to say a string. Maybe it'll be maybe like a color, and this will be blue, which is my favorite color. Okay. If you did let instead, that would be also fine, but in this case I specified that I would like these to be constant variables. Alright, so make sure that you're using the const keyword in this case, because in a future problem set that we're going to look at, we're going to be switching it up between let and const for specific reasons. So let's kind of hammer the rest of these out. I'm going to create a constant variable. Let's call it age for number. This might be something like 22. A boolean, this would be something that's true or false. So I'll say happy today, always happy, so we'll put true for that. And then null and undefined. So I'll say const like empty thing is equal to null, and then const another empty thing is equal to undefined. You might have noticed the way that I've been typing these variables as well. This is called camel casing. It's kind of gets a name from the uppercase and lowercase, uppercase and lowercase. It starts with lowercase and then uppercase for every new kind of word in that variable name. An alternative to this would be if I want to kind of do this with snake case, which would kind of look like this. And then there's something called Pascal case, which is just everything is kind of uppercased like this. Oops, except we have no underscores. Okay. I'm going to go with this one, which is the camel case version. A lot of Python folk like to use this one. This one is kind of reserved usually for specific types of things in programming, which we'll get to later. Although I encourage you to kind of follow along with me and do everything in camel case for your variable names if they have more than one word in the title, just like that. Just a little aside. Okay, so we have these 5 different variables. I'm going to go ahead and create a new terminal. Since I've opened up my VS Code project in this folder, it's actually going to pump me into this specific folder where my code is. So if I do an ls, which again works on a Mac, it might be a dir on a Windows if you don't have a certain terminal and you're using a different terminal than I'm using here, which is called bash. But if I do an ls, you can see these same files line up with the ones here on the left hand side. So I can actually run this file. You want to make sure, again, just to recap, to save the file, you see this little icon here that I have, which is the filled in circle. It means it's not saved. So I'm going to do Command S or Control S on Windows to save that. Then I'm going to use this command that I had written out here, which is node, and then the file name. It's going to be quite tricky since they're all pretty similar for me. Hopefully you had a shorter file name. You can see if I run this, nothing's going to get output since I didn't actually tell the program to output anything. Hence why I asked to use console log here. So the way that this works is I'm just going to say console.log, and I can put any variable name inside of here. So I'm going to put color in here. If I duplicate this a couple times, I can put age in here, I can put happy in here, and I can put empty thing in here, and then another empty thing in here, just like that. And I forgot to put semicolons at the end, and my editor automatically puts them in for me, but make sure to put semicolons for now as you're learning at the end of each of your statements. If I save that, and then I run this again, you'll see that I do actually get that printed out. So that's the warm-up exercise. We have the same values that I put into each of these variables, or sorry, that I got the variables to actually point at being printed out here inside the actual terminal. So that's wonderful. So that's the warm-up exercise. Once you have that done, let's go to problem set 1 that I have ready for us. I'll just close this terminal so that we can see this a bit more clearly. So I'll walk through this and I'll give you a chance to work on it yourself. We want to first create a variable called name that points at a string that contains your name. All right. On the next line after that, I want you to reassign this variable to another name, like your favorite musician, for example. And then on the next line after that, I'd like you to reassign it to something totally different. In this case, a Boolean value true. And then one last reassignment on another line will be to a number 42. So this is the same variable being reassigned 3 times after it's first initially declared to be your name. So in total, it's going to take on 4 different values throughout the life of this kind of file. And I'd like you to log out that variable after each of these steps so we can actually see it transform through this kind of process. I'll just give you a second to try that out yourself, and then we'll go through the solution together. Okay, so hopefully you had a chance to try that out. I'm going to go ahead and create this variable. One thing you might have done was create this variable as a const variable. So for example, if I said const name and then my name, let's see what happens if I try this. I'm then going to console.log out name. My editor is striking this out for kind of an unrelated reason, but let's see what this looks like. I'm going to open up my terminal again, and I'm going to do node, and then the name of this file, which is problemset1.js. And you can see that my name gets printed out. So this seems to be working so far, right? So we're kind of in a good place. Let's see if we can reassign this to my favorite musician's name. So then I'm going to say name is now equal to, let's go with when I was growing up with some of my favorite bands, Linkin Park, and we'll go with that. And then I'm going to console log name out again and see what happens. So if I go new terminal, I'm going to do node and then problem set 1. And I kind of get this scary error, right? I want to show this to you on purpose because this is pretty common, and these errors are going to come up again and again as we're learning to code together. What you're usually going to want to see though is somewhere along the line something that looks a little bit like English in this case, which is saying there's a type error, which is an assignment to a constant variable. Okay. In the variables and primitive types video, we saw that we can't reassign constant values. Once it's been assigned, it can never be changed. All right, so in this case, we're violating that because we have it declared as a const, and once it's pointing at my name here, Natter, we can't take name and point it anywhere else. So this code will break, as you can see here. So I'll close that terminal to give me more space. And to fix this, we want to create a variable that can actually change, because the requirement for this file was to create a variable that can keep changing between these different values. So if I do this as a let, let's see kind of what happens. If I do new terminal, I'll show you how to kind of work a bit better with the terminal as you're going, because you can see I keep creating new terminals as we go. But for now, this is fine. I'll say problem set -1.js. And you can see that now it works. I don't actually get a terminal. Or sorry, I don't get an error in the terminal. I'm getting my name, and then I'm getting the name of my favorite band. All right, so this will actually continue us right to the end of this file. So if I say name is now equal to true, which is the third requirement, and I console.log the name out. Let's see if I can run that and see what I get. I get true. And then now name is equal to the number 42, and I console.log name out. And I run this one more time. You can see that I'm getting these values being reassigned. So I'm only having one variable in this case called name, and I'm using it in various different ways. In this case, it starts as a string, which is my name. Then it's changing to the band, which is also a string, but now it's changing to a Boolean value, which is true. And then it's changing to a number value 42. All right. This is generally not best practice. You don't really want to change the type of the actual variable as you're coding, but as we're learning, this is fine just to kind of get an understanding for how these variables are working. Okay, great. So let's go to problem set 2. In this problem set, we're ramping it up a little bit as we go. I'd first like you to declare a variable using let, and you can name it whatever you like. Just don't assign a value to it right away. All right. Once you've done that, on the next line, I'd like you to assign it a string with the value moo. Then I'd like you to log this out to the console. Then I want to repeat these steps, but use a different variable or just switch the variable to a const variable and see what actually happens. Okay, so try that out and give it a shot, and then we'll meet back in this video and see how it goes. Okay, so once you've tried it out, let's see what the answer is. So we'll have let, any name that I like. So I'll just say my variable is equal to, well, in this case, it's equal to nothing, because I said that we don't want to give it a value. We want to assign the value in a second step. So in this case, I'm going to say my variable is equal to moo, just like the instructions here. So here we're declaring the variable, but we're not assigning anything to it. Here we're assigning to the previously declared variable the string moo. Okay, and then we're going to console.log out my variable. Perfect. So let's see how this works. I'm going to go terminal, new terminal. You see I keep opening new terminals. I'll show you, again, as I said, a better way to do that. I will say node problem set 2 that we're on, and you can see that it works. We get moo printed out. What would this look like if it was a const variable? Because we saw previously in the problem set that if this was a const, it wouldn't allow us to reassign it. But what if we want to make a const variable and then try to assign to it later? So let's try this. Another variable, just like that. And then I want to do another variable is equal to moo as well. You can see I'm already getting an error because my editor is actually trying to help me out, saying const declarations must be initialized. However, let's assume that you don't have that, and we're actually doing this from our head without our editor actually helping us. If I try to console log another variable, in theory, you might think that this works. However, in practice, we actually can't do this, and we'll get the error that we saw previously, which is that very similar error, I guess, slightly different error, a missing initializer in a const declaration. Okay. Eventually, you'll get better at actually reading these errors out, but I just kind of skipped this part right here. You can see that's pointing at where the error is here with some nice arrows in the terminal syntax, but we're getting a syntax error missing initializer in const declaration, which is pointing to this line right here. So a const variable can't be assigned to at all, even if it's not assigned to at the start, like a let variable. Once a const variable is declared, it's frozen. That label is basically frozen. That variable is frozen. So if we did want to do this, the only way to actually accomplish this would be to do the declaration and actual assignment or the initialization all in one step, just like this. So if we did this, this would actually fix that bug. I'll clear out my terminal and I'll run this again, and you can see that I get the second move from the const. All right, let's go to the final problem set for this video. Threw a bit of a curveball into this one. I'd like you to start learning to use Google to search for some of these things. There's a special operator in JavaScript. We haven't really learned about operators too much yet, but once you Google this and find specific articles, it might be kind of easy to see an example. But there's this type of operator in JavaScript that allows us to print out or get the type of a specific value. So it's a string or it's a Boolean or any of the primitive types, as well as some other specific types in JavaScript. I'd like you to Google for that and see kind of what you can find about how the operator works. And I'd like you to use that operator to see if you can print out the types of the 5 primitive values. All right. So what I don't want you to do is this. I don't want you to just say string like that, right, and print them all out. That would be too easy. I'd like you to actually use this operator inside of here. Use this type of operator inside of this print or console log to actually make it print out string. All right. So I'd give you a little while to Google for that and play around with it and see if you can get some errors and fix them yourself and actually get that printed out. And then we'll meet back here and take a look at it together. Okay, so hopefully you had a chance to try that out. This one's a bit trickier, so let's kind of go through it step by step. This is pretty important from a kind of learning programming perspective, because at least when I learn programming, and I know a lot of people who get started, they kind of get stuck as soon as they need to reach out for some help on the internet. I remember thinking that all developers and programmers just have all this information crammed in their head, but in fact the best developers and programmers, funnily enough, are actually the best Googlers, or the best people at searching for different pieces of programming content and for help. So let's simulate what that would look like. I'm just going to open up Google Chrome, which is the browser I'm using, and open up Google. Once I have Google open, I got some funny trending searches. We're not going to be searching for those things. I want to see if I can find out information about this type of operator. So let's see what this looks like. If I just do type of, you can see in this case, it actually works pretty well for me, because this is specific for the most part to JavaScript. However, a lot of the time, the things you want to look up might not always show up in kind of a JavaScript context, because they might appear for different types of programming languages, or they might not even be related to programming at all. So in this case, you can see that some of the suggested things I can look up related to type of are type of JavaScript, Python, C++. These are all different programming languages. But if I instead search for type of JavaScript, that might be a potentially better scenario for the most part. Like if you add the actual name of the language, sometimes you might get better results. This is kind of hit or miss. It just takes some practice, but just get a hand of Googling for these things, just so that it becomes less intimidating when you see new concepts that you need to search up. If I go back to my hint here, it says that the MDN web docs are a good resource. So hopefully you caught that when you did the search. That's this one right here, which is by Mozilla. However, there's lots of good resources like W3 Schools and several others. Usually these are going to pop up towards the top. I'm going to go for the MDN web docs one. If you didn't look at this one, don't worry. I'm just going to kind of use it as one example. You can see that if I zoom in here a little bit, it's going to say type of is an operator that returns a string indicating the type of an operand's value. Oh my goodness, that is so confusing. What does any of that even mean? Is that even English, right? So luckily for us, they actually have a nice little kind of snippets here where you can actually see how these things work. And they're actually using console logs, which is what my problem set actually asks for. So you can see that inside of this console log, they're actually doing this type of, which seems to be some kind of JavaScript keyword, and then the value. So in this case, they're saying that if you use type of and then 42, which we know is a primitive number in JavaScript, we should actually see number being printed out. All right. So let's test this out. Let's see if this works. So it's saying use type of and then the value. So I'm going to put that inside here, just like they have inside of the documentation, type of, and then let's just say 42, just like they have. Okay, you can see that my editor highlights it, and yours probably will too, which kind of usually means that it's a keyword in JavaScript and means something special. It might do something special. So if I create a new terminal here again, and I run this problem set, which is problem set 3, fantastic. Look at that. We get number. All right. So just to kind of go over what this is doing again real quick before we do the others, this operator is going to take the value and give us that type as a primitive type. And in this case, 42 is a number, which is one of the 5 primitive types. So it's going to print out the type, not the value, which is number. Okay, let's do a string. So I'll do console.log type of hi. And then let's do a Boolean type of true. And let's do type of and then null. And undefined. Perfect. And then if I save that file and I rerun this, you'll see something a bit curious, which we'll get to in future videos, but you'll see that we get number for 42, string for hi, Boolean for true, we get object, which is kind of weird, for null, and we get undefined for undefined. So undefined and null are a bit quirky in JavaScript. We won't get too deep into that into this video, but just be aware that these are the correct results. This one is extra kind of strange for what object means, because that actually means something very different in JavaScript. And this is just kind of a quirk of history and how this actually works internally inside the language. Okay. Great job. If you got through all those, I hope that practice was worthwhile. I encourage you to kind of play around with these and mix and match them and try different things to actually make it break. Funnily enough, getting errors and then fixing them is actually the best way to learn this stuff. If you would like more problem sets, please feel free to post in the comments and I'll try to come up with some more. As well, if you get any weird errors, feel free to post those in the comments as well, and maybe we can all help each other out in there. If you found this video helpful, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. In the next video, what we're going to do is actually look at the mathematical operators in JavaScript and how we can use them to do math, basically, which is everyone's favorite subject. And then we'll also go through a series of problem sets for that as well. I'll see you next time.